I am he, as you are me, and we are all together. Welcome. This is part 21 of Project 2025, read by Douglas Wayne Ricketts. Yeah, I know that guy. Hope you're well today. It's election day here in California. I am purposefully not looking at the polls. I want to be surprised when we get a breaking news result. We're on page 261 of this 920-page PDF. The next section is titled, The Importance of Space. With China developing increasingly capable space and counterspace technologies, and Russia taking more aggressive action in space, space has emerged as the latest warfighting domain. In response, the DNI created the Office of the Space Executive, OSX, in 2018, as an experiment to promote greater integration of IC space activities without incurring excessive overhead. The DNI mandated greater collaboration across the enterprise without adding personnel, alerting authorities, and increasing budgets. The Space Executive's design reflects the original design principles of the ODNI. The ODNI was explicitly not designed to be a departmental headquarters with command and control of the 18 agencies' vast bureaucracies. Rather, it was designed to be small and lightweight, with a mission to coordinate and integrate the critical activities of the IC's 18 agencies without creating new bureaucracy. That goal should remain in force, and calls by outside entities or Congress to add new centers and layers should be rejected. The Office of the Space Executive has been recognized as an effective governance model and has spawned similar efforts, including the Election Threats Executive, Economic, and Threat Finance Executive and Cyber Executive. With this in mind, the following initiatives should be pursued. Expand collaboration with partners. For too many decades, the IC and DoD have acquired and operated satellites independently. To improve their ability to meet the threat posed by China and Russia, the IC and DoD should 1. Explore new methods for better integrating our space assets. 2. Examine the possibility of joint programs. And 3. Fully utilize unique Title 10 and Title 50 authorities to execute space defense and offense strategies jointly. Additionally, the IC should support building international alliances with like-minded partners beyond the Five Eyes intelligence-sharing nations. Increasingly, potential allied nations and their commercial companies are developing innovative space capabilities to augment and strengthen the U.S. space defense and intelligence posture. Refocus space-related intelligence collection. The IC has developed a space threats collection posture predicated on 3 assumptions. 1. The best information on developing space threats comes from collection against the adversary's military institutions on Earth. 2. There should be a clear dividing line between DoD's intelligence activities and the IC's. And 3. Only government-developed, exquisite capabilities can inform threat analysis and decision-making effectively. Developments by our adversaries and the emergence of a vibrant commercial space marketplace over the past decade have rendered all 3 assumptions false and even dangerous. The IC must therefore refocus and invest in methods that will enable it to characterize accurately the threats that already exist in space, not just on the ground. Break down barriers to information sharing and collaboration with the DoD, and embrace commercially derived capabilities that can be adapted to a national security mission, all while emphasizing the need to protect critical supply chains and the cybersecurity needs that result from an increasingly government-commercial low Earth orbit. Our nation's economic and national security depends on being able to advance America's leadership position in space, which is eroding in the face of increasing threats from adversaries and our own inaction. An unfinished experiment. The intelligence community, including specifically the role of the DNI and ODNI, is an unfinished experiment. The envisioned design principle was a conservative one, a small, network-centric model for enterprise coordination as opposed to a large, monolithic bureaucracy like DHS. The ODNI, however, has reverted in some way to a bureaucratic and hierarchical model characterized by limited effectiveness. Historically, the CIA has undercut the DNI and maintains primacy in the IC hierarchy, especially regarding the White House. An incoming conservative president can right the ship and return the IC governance model to first principles by using a limited but empowered leadership and coordination design to serve the nation's intelligence and national security needs while reclaiming the public trust with fiscal responsibility, political neutrality, personnel accountability, technological prowess, and necessary human capital needed to counter the immense nation-state and asymmetrical threats facing our country. That is the end of that section. We are on to page 267, 235 if you're reading the book proper. This section is titled Media Agencies. U.S. Agency for Global Media by Maura Namdar. Mission Statement. The mission of United States Agency for Global Media, USAGM, is to inform, engage, and connect people around the world in support of freedom and democracy. However, this mission statement does not reflect the current work of the agency. The mission is noble, but the execution is lacking. To fulfill its mission, USAGM should also aim to present the truth about America and American policy, not parrot America's adversaries' propaganda and talking points. Overview. Originally formed as the Broadcasting Board of Governors, BBG, in 1994, the BBG changed its name in 2018 to the United States Agency for Global Media. The USAGM is a sub-cabinet agency of the U.S. government with a budget of just under $1 billion. The agency oversees two government broadcasting networks, the Voice of America, VOA, and the Office of Cuba Broadcasting, OCB. USAGM also oversees 100% of the grant funding for several independent grantee organizations, including the Middle East Broadcasting Network, MBN, Radio Free Asia, RFA, Radio Free Europe, and Radio Liberty, RFE and RL, and the newly formed Open Technology Fund, OTF. The Voice of America provides news and information in 48 languages to a weekly audience of more than 326 million people worldwide. For more than 80 years, VOA journalists have supplied news and information about the U.S. audience-specific regions of interest and concern, and the world at large. VOA radio and television signals are broadcast to approximately 3,500 affiliates, and satellite transmissions reach countries where free speech is banned or where civil society is under threat. VOA uses digital, web, and mobile media as well, which, while sometimes useful in propagating valuable information globally, has created specific violations of the agency's prohibition against broadcasting to the domestic U.S. audience, particularly with regard to flagrantly political content, as has been the practice with recent and current VOA content directors and managers. The network once had a generally well-received brand value, but it has deteriorated under decades of poor leadership and a loss of its once prized, unbiased reporting. Get some pretty loud sirens going by tonight. While I'm waiting for them to pass, I'm gonna take a sip of today's concoction. Nothing fancy. Sparkling water, a couple shots of vodka, and guava kombucha. Tasty. There are bright spots within VOA, but mismanagement and declining production values have diluted its once great reputation as the singular voice in American news broadcasting abroad. The Office of Cuba Broadcasting oversees radio and television Marti, a multimedia hub of news, information, and analysis that provides the people of Cuba with programs through satellite television, radio, and digital media. These programs present news and information about Cuba's oppressive government from the outside world that would otherwise be heavily restricted. The OCB remains a critical avenue of truth to the Cuban people, but has been threatened with crippling budget and operational constraints, including empathetic attitudes toward communist Cuban leadership, coupled with organizational hostility toward the OCB by certain elements of USAGM leadership. During the Biden administration, the OCB has been threatened with closure while also suffering chilling reductions in force. Gosh, the evil Biden administration wanting to tell the Cuban people all the horrible things their government does. Meanwhile, Trump and Rubio and those goons just want to take it over. But I digress. The Middle East Broadcasting Network is an Arabic language news organization with a weekly audience of 27.4 million people in 22 countries in the Middle East and North Africa. The MBN consists of 2 television networks, radio, websites, and social media platforms. Together, they deliver news and analysis on the region, American policies, and Americana. In the sync world, Americana is like Johnny Cash's latest music. Pretty sure that's not what they're discussing. The MBN has correspondents throughout the Middle East and North Africa. Radio Free Europe / Radio Liberty is a private, non-profit, multimedia broadcasting corporation that serves as a surrogate media source in 27 languages and 23 countries, including Afghanistan, Iran, Pakistan, Russia, and Ukraine. Founded in the early days of the Cold War, Radio Free Europe in 1949 and Radio Liberty in 1953, and merged in 1976, Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty were intended to execute edgy and daring information operations and unrestricted news reporting deep behind the Iron Curtain. Unfortunately, like other broadcast organizations under US AGM, RFE/RL has surrendered much of its rich history to an approach that favors political trends as opposed to operations that support and represent America abroad. While there are some bright spots within RFE/RL, much of the network has redundant programming with certain VOA language services, often with competing, counterproductive, or dissimilar messaging. The recent addition of RFE/RL's Hungarian language service, Szabad Europa, which literally means Free Europe, falls outside the intended scope of RFE/RL's charter by targeting a democratically elected, pro-American European and NATO ally. Yeah, because everything's hunky-dory in Hungary. Viktor Orbán didn't get ousted for being completely corrupt, did he? God, these people. Not least, RFE/RL has been plagued by several serious espionage-related security risks within its ranks. Radio Free Asia is a private, non-profit multimedia news corporation that brings news and uncensored content to people in 6 Asian countries that restrict free speech, freedom of the press, and access to reliable information. RFA also provides educational and cultural programming, as well as forums for audiences to engage in open dialogue and freely express opinions. RFA utilizes on-the-ground reporters and networks of in-country sources, citizen journalists, and eyewitnesses who provide leads, tips, images, and video. Several reports from the Office of the Inspector General, OIG, were released showing waste and self-dealing, including security vulnerabilities, and RFA leadership awarding insiders millions of dollars of grant funding. For example, as the OIG stated in one report, the then president of RFA established the Freedom to Connect Foundation and therefore awarded 2 contracts totaling $1.2 million to the foundation she herself founded. Furthermore, the OIG found that RFA did not comply with federal procurement requirements for grantees. OIG identified instances in which RFA and its agents did not comply with OMB, Office of Management and Budget, conflict of interest procurement requirements for grantees. Specifically, OIG found that RFA entered into 14 contracts totaling $4.0 million. They really put .0. 51% of the amount of OTF FY's 2012 and 2013 project-related contracts, with organizations that had some affiliation with either RFA officials or members of OTF Advisory Council. This same leadership proceeded to wastefully form the Open Technology Fund as its own independent grantee with the help of USAGM senior management prior to the tenure of Trump-appointed leadership. The Open Technology Fund's goal is to provide funding to support the research, development, and implementation of Internet freedom technologies that circumvent censorship. OTF was formed under dubious circumstances by using consolidation rules to usurp the mission and funding of USAGM's pre-existing Office of Internet Freedom, OIF, which funded far more diverse technologies with much greater transparency. OTF, however, operates with far less transparency and strictly restricts funding to open source technology. OTF does not support any technology with even partially closed source code, notwithstanding that such closed source code would provide more protection against hacking. Although OTF touts large user numbers, This could not be substantiated upon requests for information, and it was discovered by former senior US AGM leadership that OTF makes extremely small, insubstantial donations to much larger messaging applications and technology to bolster its unsubstantiated claims. Despite its vibrant self-lobbying and publicity efforts, OTF remains a wasteful and redundant boondoggle. Its grantee status was suspended by Trump-appointed US AGM leadership for a number of reasons, including non-compliance with its grant terms and for actions that resulted in several fraud and waste investigations. The OIF, which predates OTF, was historically under US AGM's Office of Chief Strategy Officer and for years had been performing the same tasks as OTF within US AGM headquarters for the benefit of all US AGM broadcast networks. With much greater transparency, OIF succeeded with fewer staff while simultaneously fielding more diverse and robust technologies. Absent a meaningful organizational impact analysis to justify the wastefulness of the decision-making process, OTF usurped the entire OIF budget and was set up as a new grantee organization. Exacerbating matters, OIF was shut down in order to provide massive grants to the opaque activities of OTF and its founding leadership, who went on a free-spending boondoggle for high-end Washington, D.C. office space, furnishings, and top salaries for its leadership team. The words of the day are boondoggle and usurp. Numerous career staff whistleblowers came forward to sound the alarm about OTF to Trump-appointed leadership, citing concerns about the OIG reports, wasteful spending, and other substantive performance matters. Nonetheless, the Biden administration reinstated OTF to full operational status and ceased all investigations immediately after assuming office. Attempts at reform. Late in the Trump administration, following the long-delayed Senate confirmation of Michael Pack as US AGM Chief Executive Officer, CEO. Do you really need to tell people what a CEO is? Agency leadership rapidly initiated long overdue and necessary reforms, including security reforms repeatedly requested by the Office of Personnel Management, OPM, and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, ODNI, that had been ignored by US AGM leadership. Unfortunately, as was the case with the OTF, the Biden administration immediately reinstated personnel who had been fired for gross security violations, placing the agency back into its previous failed posture, one that poses a danger to national security. The firewall saga. The vital error in US AGM's current organizational/cultural calculus is the agency's selective application of a journalistic firewall, quotation marks. The amorphous interpretation of a firewall shifts depending on which administration is in office and who is asking questions. Although a firewall should ensure journalistic independence, it has been used without formal regulation for decades in order to shrink legitimate oversight of everything from promoting adversaries' propaganda to ignoring journalistic safety. Because that's one thing Trump's administration is known for, is caring a whole lot about journalistic safety. Often, the firewall is touted when journalists are either promoting anti-American propaganda that parrots adversarial regime talking points or promoting politically biased viewpoints in opposition to the VOA character. Such weak oversight, alien to any other large media network or news organization, particularly one derivative of US foreign policy and national security goals, was erroneously enshrined in a document known as the Firewall Regulation. The Firewall Regulation was entered into the Federal Register on the eve of the Senate confirmation of President Donald Trump's US AGM CEO, Michael Pack. It was the quintessential midnight reg, designed to throttle the statutory and executive authority of the agency head. It stipulated that agency management, by standards unknown to most large broadcast companies, was forbidden from engaging in oversight and direction of content in any way, even false content. It ran counter to the law, including the Smith-Mundt Act, and it was harmful to the agency itself and to the foreign policy and national security goals of the US government. Even content that went well beyond fair and accurate reporting on US domestic and political problems could not be reined in by front office leadership under the firewall regulation. Soon, VOA's White House correspondent was posting content highly critical of and personally insulting to the United States president, in contradiction of VOA's own journalistic standards, policies, and procedures. US AGM career officials considered such content sacrosanct and bravely independent journalistic content protected by the spirit of the firewall regulation, despite ample evidence to the contrary. Late in the Trump administration, US AGM political leadership, following an intensive US Department of Justice review, revoked the firewall regulation over the protests of journalistic organizations, none more vociferous than the VOA itself. While the abuses of the firewall regulation are particularly disconcerting, they encompass just a fraction of similar overreaches of the agency's journalistic mission. Current and former US AGM/VOA leadership, who wanted to maintain virtually zero accountability and oversight, waged a campaign of interference, resistance, and disinformation to stifle change at the agency. Perhaps not coincidentally, various media outlets with relationships to former and future US AGM leadership published near-daily criticisms of Trump administration appointees and also of grantee organizational leaders who were appointed by CEO PAC to implement long-overdue reforms. Agency mission failure. Currently, the US AGM, by and large, is not fulfilling its mission, which remains so ill-defined and ambiguous that it enables the organization to go about its business largely unguided, with little to no oversight. Rather than providing news and information in an accurate, reliable way that promotes and supports freedom and democracy, the agency is mismanaged, disorganized, ineffective, and rife with waste and redundancy. These shortfalls are either oriented toward or directly contribute to the agency's media organizations joining the mainstream media's anti-US chorus and denigrating the American story, all in the name of so-called journalistic independence. Indeed, content during the Trump administration was rife with typical mainstream media talking points, assailing the president and his staff. Because he did such a great job the first time. Remember the pandemic, anyone? The few bright spots within VOA and the OCB are often stifled instead of supported. Top-level talent often leaves the agency or is met with obstacles rather than support. Opportunities for modernization and effective strategy are ignored, and wasteful spending and misallocation of resources are the norm in an environment in which nepotism is rampant and political gamesmanship protects bad actors. Amanda Bennett was confirmed as US AGM CEO in 2022 after 2 years of being blocked by several members of Congress. Legal advocacy organization America First Legal Foundation even wrote to President Joe Biden asking him to withdraw her nomination, citing several severe national security failures while she was director of VOA. Her tenure as director during the Obama administration and her holdover into the beginning of the Trump administration was marred with operational failures, security failures, and credibility failures. Those failures are reportedly ongoing during her current tenure as CEO. Necessary reforms. Security issues. The Office of Personnel Management and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence flagged severe security failures during 4 extensive investigations of the US AGM, each conducted during a 10-year period between 2010 and 2020. Security personnel and former agency senior leadership ignored these issues and allowed them to persist. In brief, the US AGM is vulnerable to exploitation by foreign spies. During the last 6 months of the Trump administration, known foreign intelligence operatives were removed from the OCB and RFE/RL. During the 10-year period between 2010 and 2020, both the OPM and the ODNI found that the US AGM's Office of Security, under the Office of Management, had grossly ignored and flouted many of the federal government's most critical and long-standing information and personnel security protocols, regulations, and practices. During the investigative period, in which the findings were largely, if not wholly, ignored by agency senior leadership, over 1,500 US AGM personnel, nearly 40% of its total workforce, were performing their Tier 3 and Tier 5 national security sensitive positions with falsified and/or unauthorized suitability for employment determinations, and with access to sensitive federal buildings and information systems. In many cases, records, including social security numbers, were falsified or replaced with notational placeholders, and fingerprints in many dozens of cases were never submitted to the Federal Bureau of Investigation for basic background investigations. Just like to point out, there isn't a single citation for any of that. They're just making the claim. By the time these issues were addressed by members of the Trump administration, more than 500 personnel with unauthorized access and clearances had left the USAGM and rolled into other federal agencies with reciprocal clearance authorizations. Many others disappeared into U.S. society. As of January 2021, the USAGM had not yet determined the whereabouts of these individuals. The USAGM must never again be entrusted with delegated authority over its personnel security programs and suitability determinations until such time as it can prove that these failures will not happen again. These responsibilities must remain with the Department of Defense and the Office of Personnel Management, to which they were transferred in the final weeks of the Trump administration. And we're going to stop there today. The next section is called Journalists' Security. This recording and all other recordings related to this Project 2025 reading are copyrighted by Douglas Wayne Ricketts. All rights reserved. Unless you agree with me that Project 2025 sucks, then please feel free to use as much of this reading as you want. Thanks for listening.